Welcome, friends, to The Everyday Educator, a podcast from Classical Conversations where we equip you to teach, mentor, and disciple your students in the classical Christian model of home education. I'm your host, Kelli Wilt, and today I have a special guest here to discuss one of the most meaningful and memorable milestones in the challenge years, the senior thesis. Our guest today is Charity Miner. And Charity, if you'll take just a moment to introduce yourself to our listeners, that would be fantastic.
Oh, thank you, Kelli. I'm Charity Miner, and it was supposed to be just a year. We were supposed to just be in classical conversations for 1 year to be with friends for an extra day. And we were doing Dave Ramsey at the time, so I had to tutor to make that financially viable. And at the end of that year, we were about to move, and we just said, well, there's no classical conversations community where we're moving to. And everyone at Practicum said, we will pray for you. And 2 weeks after we had arrived in Louisiana, I was a brand new tutor for the newest classical conversations community there in Louisiana. And it just kind of went from there. In the Lord's providence, we planned to continue through Challenge B. And then when we got there, we just decided that education was such a beautiful education. Our children were really benefiting from it, each for their own reasons. And so we just decided to continue on. So we started classical conversations when our oldest was 6. And then our middle was 4 and our youngest was 2. And then now our oldest, Lucy, is 20. She's a junior at New College Franklin in Franklin, Tennessee. And that's a classical college because she just wanted to continue doing what she had been doing in Challenge. Our second is Josh. He is 18. He is a freshman pursuing his electrical engineering degree at NC State. Our youngest is Ben. He is in Challenge 3, and he will be graduating from Challenge 4 if all goes well next year. My husband is a financial planner and has his own business, and I am a current Challenge 4 director. I've also directed Challenges 1 through 4 and all the other tutorings, and I also am a mentor for the classical learning cohort and also the online learning seminar, and I'm also doing the Cersei apprenticeship. So that is me in a nutshell.
Well, and now if you're a listener at home, you can completely understand why Charity is the perfect guest for the topic of this podcast. So we're actually here to discuss something that is near and dear to both of our hearts, because I've had the privilege also of serving as a Challenge 4 director in the past. And Charity and I have one thing in common, and that is that our babies, our youngest children, are in Challenge 3 this year. And next year, we will be celebrating that final year of Challenge 4 together with them as their directors. And so in Challenge 4, our students are at the end of a journey. They're at the end of a wonderful journey, and they're asked to do something completely remarkable. They don't just complete assignments or pass exams. They actually formulate a thesis, they defend it with reason, and they articulate it, we hope, and pray with confidence before a panel of judges. And this is truly a capstone of the classical model, and it is a beautiful, beautiful picture of our students growing into articulate, thoughtful Christian adults. And I know that this sentiment is near and dear to both Charity and to myself. So I'm really excited to unpack that today. So if you are listening to this podcast, and if you're parenting a Challenge 4 student now, or you are preparing for what is ahead, or you're just simply curious about how classical education culminates, what is the big deal? What is the goal that we are striving for? Today, we're going to explore the purpose, the process, and also the potential of senior thesis and what it can mean for your family. So Charity, let's start with this question. For families who are new to Challenge 4, or perhaps are just curious, how would you describe the senior thesis and its purpose?
So the senior thesis, as the way that I think of it, it has 2 parts. For the first part is the paper, where the student formulates a thesis, the topic that they particularly want to research. They do all the research, they refine their thesis, and they write about a 15-page paper, give or take. They submit that to a panel of judges for them to read through and review and write questions. The second part is the defense, where they stand in front of the panel of judges and invitees. It depends on the community, what that group of people looks like. They present an abstract of their paper describing their thesis and what their findings were. And then for about 20 minutes, they defend their thesis to those panel of judges. And it's a beautiful thing.
It is. I completely agree. As I think about our family's experience in classical conversations, and particularly that challenge for a year, I am grateful for the opportunity to have completed senior thesis with two of our three children. And I'm curious for your thoughts on why is senior thesis such a fitting, I like the word culmination of a classical Christian education. What makes it truly special for our students and their families?
Kelli, I've often noted that God is the best test giver. His tests test not only what we know and test our hearts, but also continue that work of faith in our hearts. And so we can take joy in that too, right? Every test that he gives. And I find the senior thesis to be very much like that. It not only calls back to even presentations when they were little 4-year-olds or 5-year-olds, depending on when they started, all the way through science fair and mock trial and the other capstone events of challenge. And all of those rolled into one is what comes out of senior thesis. And so it is just a beautiful picture of all they have learned how to do as they defend their good ideas to a friendly panel of judges. But it's just a beautiful thing.
It is. It is. As you were walking through the different events, that capstone events that our students are privileged to participate in, I kept reflecting on my own children and who they were at those moments in time. And then I remember for both of my two older children, both of our sons, I remember the feeling of seeing them stand in front of the judges and how, as a mom, it was such an emotional feeling for me. Just a moment where I knew I had to show up with Kleenex in my pocket because that is what we want for them. We want for them to be prepared to stand ready to give an answer in all things, particularly as believers in their faith and in their walk with Christ. And I agree with you, it is such a lovely culmination of all of those experiences, which in their own small ways and some larger ways contribute to that full-bodied classical Christian education that we desire for our children. So my next question for you is this. Let's kind of dive into more about what is the senior thesis. So how do students choose a senior thesis topic and refine it into a clear, defensible claim? Because they could, choose, they have autonomy to look at all of their studies, all of their experiences, just like we've alluded to with classical conversations. And there is a whole realm of topics that they can choose from. How do we help guide them to the one that might be best for them and actually formulate it into something that they can defend?
Yeah. So one of the things I like best about classical education is it's really seeking to take that person and help them become who they are in Christ, right? And so as I direct my own children or as I advise other parents how to direct their student, we're looking for what are they interested in? Who are they? How has God made them unique? And usually that comes out almost right away. My junior right now is already thinking about what he wants to write his senior thesis about, and he's searching, like, what are the things that he's wondering about, and that's really what it goes down to, right? Is that wonder. And I've seen each student over the years express who they were simply by choosing that topic and then pursuing that topic to its final culmination. And just grow, they become even more themselves, a more educated themselves, through that process. And
Right. I agree with you. I agree with you. I always tell my students to consider only things that make their heart beat fast. And so I think part of that is due to the fact that they're going to spend a lot of time researching and pondering that topic over the course of the year. And also, I want them to be driven by a passion for what they are discovering, and also the idea of how can I apply this to my future walk. And the other thing that adding to your ideas, which I think are fabulous, I also ask them to ask their friends, what do I talk about all the time? What do
yeah.
I really enjoy? And it's often illuminating to them to see what their friends say to them. Like, oh, when we were studying American government in Challenge 1, you were all over that. And you talked about the Second Amendment, or, just whatever particular topic, because then they have this resurrection of memory. Oh, yeah, I really did enjoy that topic. And I think I would like to learn more. It's just so fun, like you said, to see them becoming the people that God has designed them to be, and uncovering that a little bit more even through the senior thesis process. So my next question is for our families that maybe are in the midst of, I'm thinking Challenge 1, maybe they're in the midst of research papers for research right now. What makes senior thesis different than any other research paper?
I love the research paper in Challenge 1. Don't you? I love it. It is like a research paper in that you have to do the research, but it is unlike a research paper in that you have a thesis that you're trying to defend with that research. Research paper is more exploratory. We're curious about a topic. It prepares them very well for the senior thesis, where they take a thesis and they defend it with their research, even including a refutation, because they have an audience that may or may not agree with them. And where do you place that refutation depends on how hostile your audience might be to your particular thesis, which I have had a number of students have fairly controversial. And so then also the defense, when a Challenge 1 student prepares and reads or presents their research paper, nobody is asking them hard questions. They're saying, oh, I really enjoyed your research, and maybe asking them about their research, but never giving them a challenge. And that is the second way in which it is the most different from the research paper that they do in Challenge 1.
Well, let's focus in on that, because that whole defense before a panel of judges is unique to this project. And they have, by this point in their challenge journey, had moments where they've stood before judges for science fair, and they've done mock trial. They've had some experience with assessment in different forms. But what does the defense before a panel look like, and how do you help your students to prepare? Because it is a very different thing than perhaps they've experienced at other stages along the journey. So I know with my class, my Challenge 4 class that I had most recently, there was a lot of fear and trepidation about the judges, and are they out there to just have an aha moment? I caught you. Even though you did all this work, you're completely ignorant. And I assured my students that was not the spirit of the judging panel. So can you talk a little bit about what is that like, and how do you help your students to be able to prepare for that moment where they're face to face with a judge who has read their thesis and, like you said, may not agree with what they're postulating in their paper?
Yeah. So I find that every class is different, right? Some classes are much more confident. My class last year, I actually had one student tell his panel of judges to be hard on him. And okay, I guess you could do that. So Every class is a little different. What I find, and this has been my experience in every level of challenge that I've directed, where kids get nerves when they're about to do debate or something like that, is just to kind of practice it and do it where the stakes aren't quite as high. So, in challenge one, we would have a silly debate. We would debate Goldilocks and the Three Bears. In challenge four, we take our week 30, and I invite a mock panel of judges from the community or from the group of parents that we have, and we just workshop defending their thesis right there when they're having all the nerves and it's about to happen, because we always do our defense after week 30 for our challenge 4 group. And so right in the thick of all the emotions and everything, they get to stand up there, and it doesn't matter the questions that are lobbed at them, because the whole part is just standing up and saying something, in your own defense. So practice is just, there's nothing like being able to get those nerves out, to get some experience where it doesn't matter quite as much.
I agree. It's wonderful for them to see that this is a process, and just that moment of impromptu preparation does so much for them, settling their nerves and just harnessing the ability to do something that I think most adults would balk at. If we're being honest, there are very few people who don't have some semblance of nerves when it comes to public speaking, and even more so when you are articulating something that you believe. And so to be able to sit in that moment and to be able to harness those nerves and yet still control the words that come forth out of your mouth is an extremely rhetorical skill that I think many of us wish that we had more opportunities to practice when we were younger, because then we would have much more comfort speaking as adults. So, as our listeners are hearing this conversation, some of them may be thinking, that sounds really hard. And why would I subject my student to that? So as a challenge 4 director now, and also as a mom, I think, let's look beyond just the academic portion of this for a moment. What growth do you see in students aside from academics throughout the thesis process?
I was talking with my son about this, the one who recently defended his thesis. And he was talking about how the first person that you defend your thesis to is yourself. And the amount of character that is built as you reflect on how you're going to persuade an audience of what you have already persuaded yourself of. Yeah. And doesn't that mimic what we do as Christians? How can we use who we are, what we have learned, to, even if not persuade others, just stand firm, as we have been called to do, whatever the outcome of that is. And unfortunately, too many parents do feel that hesitation to stand in front of people. Our education did not prepare us for that, which is just another reason to love what Classical Conversations is doing, because they're sneaky, right? They are redeeming our education while we are educating our own children. And so I am now able to stand in front of people and to defend my own thoughts and feelings in the ways that these kids have been trained to do since they were tiny. And I just love seeing what is coming out of my Challenge 4 classes, and not mine, but out of Classical Conversations, the kind of humans that they are becoming, because they've had to convince themselves first and test those ideas first.
Oh, I completely agree. I think, you have already alluded to the fact that just preparing for the thesis helps them to grow in confidence. They are different people after defending a thesis. And I have that conversation. I've had the privilege, like you, to direct several different levels of challenge. And I feel similarly about the mock trial experience in Challenge B. I tell parents, but when I'm directing Challenge B, that they need to take a good look at their children before they go into the courtroom, because they are not the same people when they come out the doors on the other side. And I feel similarly to senior thesis. I tell them, I said, take a good look at your student, because when this is complete, they will not be the same people. And it makes me a little like teary to think about it. But there are moments where you see your child growing, and it's a gradual growth. And then there are some capstone moments like senior thesis where you just see this tremendous jump and change. And it's almost startling to see the difference in our Challenge 4 students who come into the beginning of the year so excited and saying things like, oh, I hope I don't get senioritis. And then they start to get involved in the senior thesis process, and it is transformative to them. And I really appreciate what you said, particularly about Christian young people today. Like, this is essential equipping for them in the world that we live in today. And as a Challenge 4 director, I can think back to my two sons that have completed senior thesis and defended their thesis in front of a panel of judges. My firstborn is a natural orator. Oh, it has been. And I credit a lot of that to presentations from the time that he was an itty bitty little guy. My
Sure.
middle son, not so much naturally. It's something that he's had to cultivate. And I still remember, he had told his friends in his class, guys, I need you to pray for me because I just might pass out when I'm standing up there defending my thesis in front of these judges. And from the moment that he got behind the podium and he began to speak, it was as if you could feel the Spirit of the Lord in the place.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when he came down from the platform after we had applauded for him, the judges had asked all of their questions, that all of his friends stood up and just enveloped him in this huge hug.
Mm-hmm.
I think not only because they were excited for their friend that he had not passed out in front of everyone at the thesis,
Yes.
but also because they saw the growth and the change, and they, as his friends, were so excited to celebrate with him the difficult thing that they knew he had done. And so
Yeah.
I'm curious, as a director and as a mom, and I'm gonna try to like wipe myself here. Is there an experience that comes to mind for you where that just encapsulates that spirit of growth and change and maturity, seen in one of your students, either your own students or another student in the past or present?
I mean, how do you pick, right? I watched my own son's classmates. He had a particular tough panel of judges, and they usually judges they softball. He did not get any softballs. He got some tough questions, and he was just knocking them out of the park. It was just great. And I watched his classmates, who they've been classmates for a long time, some of them since they were 5. And I just watched them cheer for him and silently, but I could pick that. I could pick the student that I had who struggled through challenge. I had my daughter's class from challenge 2 through challenge 4. It's beautiful to see them develop, and just persevered and persevered and persevered. And boy, that was a win when she was able to defend that thesis. But I think a lot about the moms, where we were there from the first quickening, right? And now I'm going to go cry because a friend put it this way. She's like, I watched my son embody the idea that he was defending. And I mean, what better gift? What better proof of the glory of their education that, yes, we had given them, but God has done, right? Because yes, we did work, but he blessed it, right? And so he was working through us to see that culmination. It's not the culmination, but see that culmination of it is, I think you're right. No student is the same when they exit the room than when they entered it. But I also think no parent is the same either. It's such a beautiful. Oh, so now we're just gonna cry. Hi, everyone.
Well, I was going to say, all the parents that are listening now are grabbing tissues, and hopefully they're also saying, okay, it sounds like it's difficult, but this is what I want. I want this transformation, this culmination for my students. So I guess, let's think a little bit about, how does a parent support a student through this process? Because you're right. I mean, I didn't think about it that way, but I was changed through supporting our eldest and our middle through their senior thesis process. And I guarantee it will be the same for our baby next year as well. I say my baby, my 16-year-old who will be 17. But thinking about those other parents, I'm thinking about this too. What advice would you give to them during that senior thesis year? I mean, I think for me, the advice that I would give would be, you have to not check out. Like, you need to be as invested as your child is. And I remember for each of my sons, I was reading and I was researching right along with them and having conversations with them and continually just checking in and making sure they were moving forward. And fortunately, with senior thesis, parents they don't have that role in isolation. There is the director, but students are also encouraged to contact a mentor who will give them that mutual accountability. What words of advice would you offer to parents during that senior thesis year? How can you still be on speaking terms with your Challenge 4 student once it's complete?
Oh, that is a big question, Kelli. That is a huge question. Let me start by talking to all of the parents, not just the parents of a Challenge 4 student. You are preparing your student right now for that last year. You're preparing them right now for their, I don't know, when they turn 30. You're preparing them right now for eternity. Don't worry. It comes by smaller steps than that big picture. But everything you are doing right now is leading to that final culmination of the education that you are providing for them. And so challenge them now. Easy plus one. Don't overdo it, but hold them accountable. Do the things that we all say. First time, worst time. The first time you do something is going to be usually the worst time, but don't worry, it'll get better. Inspect what you expect. No, inspect what you expect. Yes. Pay attention to what's going on right now. Because here's the thing about senior thesis. I've never been surprised about the way that a particular student's senior thesis has turned out. The kind of student they are is the kind of student they're going to continue to be. So continue to challenge them as they are capable. You don't hold them to a higher standard than they are capable of, but continue to hold them to that standard. For the parent of a senior, of a Challenge 4 student, it is very much a work in progress, right? We are picking our battles, and it is a difficult year, a glorious year, a wonderful year, but also a year that's fraught with emotion from every one of them, of the people in that family, right? You've experienced it. I've experienced it. Sometimes mama has to cry in the corner, and it's just, and they have their feet in two different worlds. They are looking very much forward to whatever is coming next, whatever that is. And also you are still holding them to account for what they are, expected to do. So no matter how they're feeling about that, I would just say you are the anchor as the parent, even if you feel very unanchored, which means anchor yourself in Christ, anchor yourself in the intent that you started with. And then work from there. I hold them to account, but also understand that there needs to be a little bit of grace, because this is a big emotional year, and we really want to try hard to preserve that relationship and celebrate all that they have done.
Hey, everybody. We want to interrupt this show to tell you about the Odyssey program. Did you know that Challenge 4 students have the opportunity to begin their college coursework through SEU Online while participating in a leadership and personal development program? Well, the Odyssey program allows you to do just that by being a bridge between the safety of Challenge and the possibilities of the future. Odyssey peers are like minded, challenged graduates that are supported by trusted mentors and CC leaders. One of our Odyssey students said that they joined to make friends, but they gained a family. And I love that idea. Through the Odyssey Year journey, you'll gain biblical leadership, spiritual growth, personal development, practical skills, and experimental learning. To find out more about the Odyssey program, check out the link below. Let's get back to the show.
Right. I agree. I completely agree. I latched on to one of the things that you just said, and that is that you're
Mhm.
never surprised. And I would
Indeed.
echo that. I don't think
Yeah.
I've ever been surprised. I have watched senior thesis magnify both the strengths of the students who were in my communities, and also I've seen it magnify the struggles
You did.
of those students. So I'm curious, what are some of the struggles that you've observed, or some of the pitfalls that Challenge 4 students can, if they're not acting as the best version of themselves, I'll put it that way. What are some struggles that they could experience, and then how can parents best support those students through those struggles? I know, with the evolution of AI and artificial intelligence and the use of Chat GPT, I know one of the things that as directors we are trying to be vigilant about is helping our students to understand the wrongfulness of stolen intellectual property. And so, we're trying to emphasize to them that if they plan ahead and they are working at a pace, like you said, that is reasonable, that they will not fall prey to the temptation to author someone else's words as their own. But, I know one of the ways that I helped parents to work through that was I would check in with parents and not only with students. And so I would contact parents and say, okay, this is what I'm seeing in community. Your child missed this checkpoint that, I had asked them to bring their work and to show it to a peer. And they said it was quote unquote left in the printer at home, wink, wink. And so I said, that just is a yellow flag that friends aren't having eyes on what they're doing and able to help them sharpen their words and their thoughts. And so I think that communication was one thing that I had done to try to help students to not fall prey to that. I'm curious, what other struggles have you perhaps observed, and how do you help parents to be able to overcome that?
Oscar Wilde has this great quote. I'm going to butcher it. Was something like, "I forgot
Mm,
that one's character is built over the little decisions, the
mhm,
everyday decisions." And
mhm,
I try hard to remind both the parents and the students that they're the ones who are deciding who they are going to be with every little decision that they make. And and then we also have the strength of that triangle, right? Where we've got
mhm,
the director and the parent and the student. And working with those parents is one of my favorite parts about being the director of Challenge 4. Of course, I love what the kids are doing. I love every class, every group of kids. I'll automatically love them, and then, continue to love them more and more throughout the year. But I love being there for the parents. And this really, yeah, it's a beautiful year, but it's a hard year. And to walk alongside them,
mhm.
as each decision is different for every kid, right? I've seen
Right.
kids that are angry. I've seen kids that they already know what they want to do, so they have FOMO,
Yes.
senioritis
Yeah.
is, I mean, you can be afraid of it, but
Right.
I think it's a natural response to, they're just tired and they're
Yeah.
distracted and there's a lot going on. And I love that the Challenge 4 curriculum clearly understands that that is going on.
Yes.
Most of their artifacts are verbal. A lot
Mhm,
of them are impromptu. We're really
mhm.
working hard on working their memoria. So they have to speak
Right.
from what they remember. Um, and there's not a lot of opportunity for that kind of AI. In fact, we can tell, right? Again, like, has that student been working to the best of their ability, or have they been sitting on their laurels? We can tell because they open their mouth and they're speaking from their memoria. And so I'm working with that parent. This year, again, because most of their things are oral, and I have a very large class, I have provided them with the accountability of needing to write out their prepared student discussion plans. And if they don't have it, they don't get to participate in discussion. And that is the sprinkle on the top of their week. They want to get to that discussion. And so that has been a little piece of accountability that this year, it's not in the guide, but as the director, I've decided to help them and their parents know if they are prepared or not.
I love that. I love that idea. Just giving them just graduated accountability, I think is so helpful. And for parents to know that we are also that voice in that triune relationship, I think is crucial so that they don't fall prey to senioritis, so that they don't fall prey to serving the lesser version of themselves in that moment, feeling pressure and then not making a wise choice, like you said. If you butchered that Oscar Wilde quote, I think you did it fabulously. Just that they're making those individual decisions that add up to the character of who they choose to become. And this is a huge part of that. I know, seniors can fall prey in the weakest moments to feeling overwhelmed. And the temptation for some might be to think this is just one more thing that I have to do. And that's when we perkily say, no, you get to do it. But as a director, I know that it is helpful for us to set apart times so that they understand the specialness, like we've already described in depth, of the senior thesis project. So I'm curious, as a director, are there some ways that you help your families to set apart time to really focus and prioritize senior thesis even from the beginning, so that it doesn't feel like it's, quote, one more thing to do, that it is the main thing that they're able to do in Challenge 4?
This is where it's such a beautiful thing to have a community to be doing these things with, right? You could have your own senior thesis. You could be doing this at home and have your own senior thesis, get your own panel of judges. We could do that. Yeah. But it's so beautiful to be able to learn in fellowship. And that's how we are designed to do our lives, right? Designed to learn, designed to work is with other people. So I think every community has the opportunity to come alongside these graduates, these coming graduates of their community, and to gather around and figure out what's best for each class or for each community. In our community, we support our parents. I start supporting the parents at the very beginning, right after the end of the previous year. I'm already having meetings with the upcoming parents. I've already done the family interviews. I do a crack the books, at the beginning of the summer, and we look and we talk about senior thesis then. And then at orientation, we talk about senior thesis then, and preparing the parents to start this, asking their student what they want to do. I know a lot of communities I know your community, I believe, has done a senior thesis retreat. We have not done that. Instead, about the time that they are going to start on the bulk of their research, which is usually about the endish of the first semester, I have each student stand up at an appointed time and present their general idea for their thesis, and they present it to the parents. And then the parents do this beautiful brainstorm where they're trying to think through this thesis with the student, asking them about their potential avenues of research, asking them, have they located a mentor? Could they find in their networks and mentor for the student? Are there pitfalls the student hasn't thought of? It's a beautiful time at a time where many students have heard from their parents already, and they're ready to hear from other, wise adults. And so we do it that way. And then again, we practice on week 30, right at that time where they're most nervous about their defense. And we all come together as a community to practice and support them in that way. And there's other, graduation things and senior year things that we do that support them. But for senior thesis, that's primarily what we do that's special and extra as a community. What about you guys? How do you do it?
I love that idea of the continued support, but just at the beginning when they launch, it is important to have them focused rightly,
Yes.
because that good start propels them forward so much more than if they wander in the land of what am I doing? And so the last few years, our community has sponsored a senior thesis retreat, and I echo wholeheartedly the blessing of being involved in a community that just encircles one another in love and seeks for ways to serve. So the senior parents come together alongside our director in our community, and they pick a location where they actually go away for a retreat for a few days and set up different sessions with the class. Of course, there's also a lot of fun that's factored in as well. Sometimes groups will go to the beach and they'll make sure that they get in an evening of putt-putt and then, dinner on the boardwalk with ice cream, fun things like that. So it almost becomes, in a sense, a senior, like a trip together as well as a retreat, but really focusing on the idea of what are the topics that interest you? How do we narrow that kind of thinking from topics to main ideas? Like, what main idea interests you that is a portion of that topic, and then how do I take that idea and how do I make it into a thesis statement that someone could defend, and then what position do I believe about that, or what do I feel called to defend about that particular thesis? And so typically the goal is that during that time we would have lots of conversations with the parents who are attending, who, like you said, help refine those ideas with other students. So this is the time that, as I said before, those questions are asked, like, what did I always talk about? And what do you know that I like? It's a good, informative, encouraging, refining time so that they come home from that time with a thesis statement, and they also have a really good idea of where do I go with general research from this moment, so that the momentum, like you were describing, just kind of continues on. The accountability continues on from there. And that's typically something that we would do, earlier. The timeline that students are given, it would be a little bit before that. So week 7, week 8, somewhere in there in first semester, where they've been able to get into Challenge 4 and they've gotten into the rhythm of the year, and then they're prepared to go away for a few days. And it's always been such a sweet time of fellowship, as they think about big ideas, as they think about how they want to invest themselves during that Challenge 4 year. And we've never seen anything but positive consequences from taking that time away, just to be refreshed, to be refocused, and then to cheer one another on. I also like, because the parents attend, it does help the parents to be accountable to one another, to be involved, and to not think this is something my student is doing and I'm just here. That is setting yourself up for failure. That last year, as they're coming into that process, you really want to be hands-on and involved, and to be that conversationalist that your child may need, especially if, like we said, they're dealing with really intense topics. They need to be able to ask difficult questions, and you need to be prepared to be that person who's hearing them and who's really reasoning together with them so that they can defend rightly what they believe and what they've researched. We love the idea of going on a senior thesis retreat. I will say this, as a Challenge 4 parent, please do not expect your Challenge 4 director to own this process solo. Come alongside your director and say, what do you have white space for? How can I help support you? How can we support the students? And really be community. to your director, because like you said, that director is thinking about graduation as well and all of these other things that are such beautiful moments of the Challenge 4 year. And it's wonderful to have parents to come alongside and say, hey, you want to do a senior thesis retreat? I can make an amazing pot of spaghetti for dinner our first night. Or, what are some other tangible things that I can do to be helpful? It goes a long way to support that director. So I guess, my next question would be, that focused time away, when you're away for that time, how does that help them to make meaningful progress, excuse me. I know for us, just being away helps reduce the noise. It brings them into a spirit of restfulness about something that maybe they have anxiety about. And to me, as a director and as a mom, that's really valuable because they leave feeling more confident about what they have to do and how they're going to do it. So I'm curious for you, those times that your community is spending together that are those designated moments of accountability, how does it help your students to make meaningful progress throughout the year?
Anytime you have a deadline,
Yes. Yes.
that makes it happen. So I think even just hearing what your classmates are up to helps to gauge what you expect of yourself. And so I have seen students that were maybe dragging their feet a little bit, or were just not quite understanding what the whole thing was. Even if they had had the opportunity to see previous classes defend their thesis, it's quite a different thing to watch the completed thing happen in front of you versus how to start. So I think that there's a lot of benefit for the student to see that comparison. Like you said about the parents too, I think it's very beneficial for the parents to dig in. I especially love it when dads can come, because moms are accustomed to exactly what's going on. They really don't have many questions anymore. They've already asked them all. Dads love to get into the content, and it's almost like this problem that they want to help you solve. And so I love it when dads can come and provide that perspective. Then they get excited in a way that maybe they don't have the opportunity to get excited. And then they also help to propel that student forward, to be that extra accountability. If you're the mom, you're the teacher, you're accustomed to being the one saying, now, have you done this? But it's different if your dad is not usually the one saying that, to say, hey, let's talk about this. What are you doing? Getting invested in that senior thesis as well. And so I just think that that time of coming together, like you said, and the more involved you get, the more excited you get, because it's an exciting thing. These students they're taking something that is private to them and they're making it public, and there's nothing like passion to make other people passionate about your topic. So just those asking questions, that kind of Socratic development of this idea is just, it just brings everybody in, and that excitement is it's just catching. Yeah, it's infectious.
I agree. I think that is the fruit of just setting apart that special time, is that everyone gets excited because it's almost like a thinking party. And, thinking with your friends. Yeah, thinking with your friends and having your friends say, oh, I love that idea. Or, oh, that's so you. I could totally see you, researching that. It's just so affirming to our students. So we have talked about how to begin senior thesis well. We've talked about the benefits of senior thesis. And now I want to think about the ending and how do we finish well, and then even look beyond the quote unquote finish line of senior thesis to the future. So I know as parents, we can get super excited about senior thesis and what it means for our students, but sometimes our students may look at senior thesis and think, well, after Defense Day, like that's kind of the finish line. Charity, how can we help them to look at senior thesis not as a finish line, but as a launching point? And I'm curious if you have any examples of the impact that you've seen this experience have on any graduates that you know? How do
Mm,
we help them look beyond the assignment to how this impacts the future?
right. You and I know that we're educating them for their eternal lives, right?
Right.
We know that they will have an eternal life, that this education will not be wasted on
Mhm.
in a way that if we had only prepared them for a particular job, they might not actually use that in the new heavens and the new earth. So we know that we have provided them with this education. They may or may not believe that right now, and that's okay. They're I don't know about you, but I was not the wisest 18-year-old. So I didn't have a good handle on this. So what I do with my classes is I lean heavy into the leadership component.
Mhm.
Um, the this challenge themes are so beautiful. Have you noticed? Each theme is hitting them at just the right developmental moment, right? Where attending to ownership, ownership to discipline, discipline to freedom, freedom to choices, choices to consequences, consequences to leadership. And and it's beautiful because it's a universal idea. CC didn't like make it up and, force it on us. It's not, something that we must learn. It's actually something that is a progress that we do. It's a natural one. And so, but the leadership, what does it mean to be a leader? And we talk about this in my Challenge 4 class. It's the theme, but also how do we understand what it is to be a leader? We are accustomed to thinking of a leader as being like the president of the United States or even the director. But God's word tells us that it's actually something a little bit more nuanced in that if I see and am influenced by my neighbor, they are leading me in that minute, in that section, whatever, either to good or to ill, right? We are called to be encouragements to one another, to lead each other to Christ, right? And so the way that this beautiful education, this beautiful project, it continues on into not only their, next year and their adult lives, but also into eternity, is that we are training them to lead others to Christ. We are training them to know God and to make him known. We are training them to do that through being able to defend their ideas, the things that are very passionate to them. My son was saying, if you can't defend an idea that you have researched and practiced for to a bunch of friendly judges, how can you defend your faith to people who are who find completely offensive? How can you do that? And so we're just practicing them. We're helping them practice to do more of the same, and to do it about the thing that lights them up. And hopefully, maybe not now, but eventually, that will be the gospel, and that will be the good news of Jesus Christ. So I love to just lean into that leadership, talk about that leadership, define it and redefine it, and talk about how they are leading each other. And then tell them again, right before we go into senior thesis, look at the people that you are going to be talking to. It's not just these panel judges. It's not just yourself, and it's not just your grandma. We use grandma as a, how are you going to explain this to your grandma, when they're coming up with their abstracts. But also those students in Challenge 3, those students in Challenge 2. We tend to invite our entire community. We try to invite our entire community to our capstone event. And so who are you meeting? How are you meeting them? Are you leading them to life, or are you leading them to distraction? It's a good and powerful thing. It's scary. Sometimes they get scared, but it's heavy.
Oh, amen. I feel like this podcast has been just the pep talk I need heading into Challenge 4 with my daughter in the fall. This podcast is being recorded actually at the beginning of her second semester of Challenge 3. So we are right at the doorway. I actually am directing 3 right now. And I told the students just last week, we were in week 16. And I said, guys, it's the last semester before Challenge 4. And when I said that to the parents, they all began spontaneously weeping, and the students were all cheering. But, I look at this moment And I know it is such a powerful time for our students. And I'm curious, it is also, I will say, a powerful time for our families who have, who have invested and who have watched their children go from, as you so beautifully described earlier in the podcast, from presentations and foundations all the way through to mock trial and team policy debate and dare I say poetry cafe, but still, and into that Challenge 4 experience. What advice, as a Challenge 4 director and a veteran mom, I won't say an old mom, I won't even say a seasoned mom, a veteran mom, what advice would you offer to these families that are looking to that moment, that are perhaps in the same boat as us, who have students who are coming through Challenge 3 now at the door of Challenge 4? What would you share with them that would encourage them moving forward into that Challenge 4 year?
Students, you have been preparing your whole life. Your whole education has brought you to this moment. This is your thesis. This is a milestone in your eternal education. Make it your own. And that's what I tell all my students, because they get a little bit wrapped up in what their parents think or what their peers think, or, how can I present this so that my grandma understands? And I just say, it's your project. This is who you are. It's your education. This is the handing off from your parents to you what your education is going to be. And education is lifelong, right? We say, I want to be a lifelong learner. No. We are learners. We will be learning our entire lives. Will it be intentional or will it be unintentional learning? We will continue to learn. And so I think even Aristotle said that your education isn't complete. Your formal education isn't complete until you're 50 or something like that. And for him, that was almost death. So, how are you going to be educated? It's just even if you go to a university that is not providing you with the sort of education you're accustomed to, you still are the one who can go out and get that education. So this is your thesis. This is your capstone.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Charity, I just want to say thank you for joining us today on the Everyday Educator. You have been such an encouragement to me as a director, also as a mom. And I am more excited than ever to enter into Challenge 4 next year to complete this capstone with our youngest, which is a capstone in itself, I think, and will be for both of us in the coming year. If this episode encouraged you, and I'm sure it did, consider sharing it with another family who is walking the same road. And remember, as we've already discussed, education is not about checking boxes. Senior thesis is not a checklist. It's about cultivating wisdom and virtue for a lifetime. You parents are doing meaningful work, and we will give God all the glory for all that He accomplishes through it. Until next time, keep learning, keep leading, and keep pointing your students to Christ every day. Goodbye.